Welcome, everyone. I'm just letting everyone in through the waiting room, and then we will start in just a few moments. Great to see so many people joining. So we will get started in just a few minutes. If you just allow me to let everyone in from the waiting room. See, there are one or two names that I recognize, so let's just wait for everyone else to join. Thank you to everyone that is joining with us today. I'm just letting a few more people in from the waiting room. If you can just bear with me for a few moments, and then we will get started in just a few seconds. Okay, I think we're going to get started in just a moment. Okay, I think let's get started then.
At Holborn Assets, we know that trust is the foundation of any financial partnership. For over 25 years, we have been more than a financial services company. We have been a trusted partner to over 20,000 clients with 26 offices across 18 countries. Our dedication to our clients has earned us a 5-star rating on Trustpilot with over 2,000 glowing reviews. As a fully regulated, multi-award winning company, we are trusted with managing over $2 billion in assets. Our team of fully qualified advisors is committed to providing you with personalized, market-leading financial solutions. Choose Holborn Assets, your trusted partner in wealth management and financial advice. Visit our website or call us today to start your journey towards financial success.
Right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar on how to make your first million living and working in China. And the inspiration behind doing this particular webinar, because I get asked about it so very often, is, well, we've all seen it or heard of it. We get those sort of people where, in terms of living abroad, they've been able to save R1 million, or so-and-so has bought 2 or 3 different houses back home, and there are a lot of different financial gurus available out there and social media influencers who can teach you how to replicate their success. There have been quite a few of them who charge for that sort of service. Or this person I know, so-and-so, he's managed to save up R1.5 million. Or this person bought a flat in the UK, while living and working in China. Or so-and-so has managed to set himself or herself up to retire early and be financially independent by 45. It all sounds, to be honest, almost too good to be true. So is it? Is it possible? And if so, how? How can you then replicate that, or how do you do that? Well, first of all, let me give you a bit of information about myself. My name is Matthew Taron, and I'm a senior associate with Holborn Assets. We are a large global group, and I'll get to more information about the company itself. I've lived as an expat in quite a few different countries. I've lived around the world, in the UK, in China as well for quite some time, and in South Korea. And my expertise come with advising South Africans in particular, and other expats, your UK expats, your Australians, and other African expats living around the globe. Now, a little bit of information about Holborn, the company that I work for. Who are we? Who is Holborn, and what is it that we do? Well, Holborn was founded just over a quarter century ago, as you could see from that brief intro video, in the late 90s. We're currently the second largest independently owned international or independent financial advisory globally. We have assets under advisement of now just shy of $3 billion. And we are, this needs to be updated, we're available in 18 different countries, with 26 offices around the globe, managing now 30,000 clients. So we truly are a global management company. What's made Holborn different and how we've managed to grow so successfully, what puts us apart from the others, is what we refer to as our 5 pillars of success. Now, those pillars are, starting off with our size, that fact that we are the second largest independent wealth advisory globally, with, as I said earlier, licenses and offices in 26 different cities in 18 different countries, spanning the globe, managing just shy of $3 billion. And because of that size and reach, we have a very unique institutional buying power. And with that, we're offered preferential rates, and we have access to different funds, solutions, and providers which your average retail, even your large company back home, doesn't have access to, which greatly benefits our clients. The second is that independence, the fact that we are truly independent, and one can't emphasize that enough. If I think of myself, when I moved back to South Africa as an example, I started working at one of the big large companies there, the blue one. And let's face it, you and I both know it doesn't matter what conversation we have. If I was still working there, it would be a solution from that company. Whereas being independent, we're able to choose who we work with based purely on merit to our clients with great impartiality. Another reason is that service, the fact that we pride ourselves in trying to be in front of our clients at least once a quarter or every 3 months, making sure clients are being kept up to date in terms of market conditions, changes in legislation, any new funds or products within the financial world. And this is just one of the reasons why last year, at the end of last year, we won 8 international investment awards, like the Oscars of our industry. We also have a nearly 5-star credit rating, or not credit rating, 5-star Trustpilot rating, with over 2,000 reviews, something else I need to update on this slide. Then comes our education, the fact that when you're working with a wealth manager or an advisor from Holborn, you're working with a company where all our advisors and wealth managers are required to be internationally qualified, not just back home in their home regulators. I myself, through the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investments in the UK, which is the industry leader when it comes to financial education, as well as obviously doing the regulatory exams from the regulators where we're based. And then finally, that safety, looking after client money, making sure that when we do look at structuring clients' assets, we do so in an environment where we know we can provide some form of reinsurance or some form of government-backed investor protection to make sure that that capital is secure. So let's start now with the most basic element. If you've gone to China, or you're planning on going to China because you want to be like these many others who managed to save $1 million or make $1 million, well, let's first look at why. Why do people do that? Why do people save? Why do they invest? And there are different reasons. You get those who, they do it for the short term. All they want is an emergency fund to know that if something happens to them, they've got 6 months worth of cash. Or they want to finance their future studies. They want to go on holiday somewhere. They perhaps wanting to get married or buying a home. More medium to longer term plans. Why do people save for that? Well, it's very often that FIRE, what I like to call FIRE, financial independence. Those who want to be able to retire early, not necessarily stop working, but have enough to be able to cover their basics, their utilities, their rates and taxes, their medical, accommodation, food, transport. They don't want to be living month to month. They want to be able to pursue the job they like rather than the job they have to do in order to pay for those things. Not worry about money, build up that financial nest egg, that security, not still be in the same position in 10, 20 years time, or by the time they're 50 or 60, having nothing and still living, the same as they are now, month to month. Those who don't want to end up having lived in Asia for such a long time and come back, with nothing to show for it. There are others who all they want to do is simply be able to break that loop of poverty, something that we in South Africa refer to black taxes, where you spend your life living and saving to look after your parents, just as their kids do with their parents. And you don't want your kids to be able to or have to do the same for you. You want to be able to know that when you're old, you have enough to look after yourself and your kids can follow their own financial security and their own financial success. There are those who have little ones and want to save for education, make sure that they can afford that European or that American or an international education to give their kids that advantage over everyone else in the market when it comes to finding and securing a good job with a good salary. And then there are those who, they want to be able to build up a property portfolio. They want to be able to know that by the time they are 50 or 60, they have 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9 different properties, all giving them rental incomes, and they can live their life in luxury. So when I am doing this webinar, it's looking more at that medium to longer term. So let's focus on that. Now, the first thing we need to ask ourselves is, can it be done? Well, let's see what is needed to be able to do that, because it honestly all depends on you. You get people, and I speak to so many people from around the globe on a daily basis, and you get people who, they save with a goal or they have a target in mind. They're motivated. They want to understand their investments and what's affecting their money and what's making it grow. They want to be regularly updated. Know what is happening. They want to understand what the different types of investments are and what is lying underneath within their portfolio. They want to know and make sure that whatever they're investing into and however they're saving their money best suits them and will actually get them to their goal. It's not just an arbitrary, well, I'm putting some money in my bank and that's it. Then you get those who save with, well, no goal in mind. They're just saving because they need to save. They don't know why, but they need to save. They just keep their cash in the bank. They often get sidetracked. And, these are the same sort of people who very often will access their savings for the ad hoc holiday, or to help a family member or a friend, or there's that luxury purchase, that new pair of, I don't know if I'd call sneakers a luxury purpose, but some of them certainly can be. So which are you? Are you that person who knows what they want to achieve, knows where they want to get to, and wants a solution or can find a solution for that? Or are you just sort of aimlessly, going along life's journey and hoping that somehow you land up in the right place? If you are that motivated person, yes, it can be done. And I can tell you that right now. But if you are the sort of person who's just aimlessly wandering and saving on the side, it's probably unlikely that you will actually get to that sort of point. Now, the way I've liked to explain this to clients, and the easiest way I found when it comes to explaining wealth, is to look at it as a journey. It has many similar connotations, to going on holiday. Where are you going? Where is that destination? When are you going to go? Are you going to go now, next year, in 5 years' time? What kind of transport are you going to be? Is it going to be a train, car, bus, or is it going to be something faster, like an aeroplane, or a jet? And then also, well, what sort of person are you? Are you going to go the cheapest way possible, or as little bells and whistles as possible, or do you need the bells and whistles? Do you need the flexibility and the ability to be able to change your seat at the last moment, or stay a day later, or come home a day earlier, that sort of thing? Well, growing your wealth is exactly the same. Before one can help a client or help someone embark on a journey of wealth, you need to know, well, where are they going? What is that actual goal? Is that goal because they want to be financially independent by a particular age? They want to be able to build up a property portfolio. They want to be able to get a second passport at a certain age, or they want to be able to retire somewhere. Where are you going? When? Do you want to be able to achieve those goals now, within the next 5 years, the next 10 years, or the next 15 years, or by a particular age? Is there an age in mind that you have instead? And then also, what type of investment best suits that goal and that time frame? Making sure that you're not going by bus when you actually need to get there a lot sooner. And if you are only going to get there, the aim is only to get there at a much, much later date. Well, you don't need to go and spend extra money on a jet when you can just take the bus. And then comes into the last part as well, that cost, same as with going on holiday. Do you want it to be cheap and less flexible, have more strings attached perhaps, or restraints? Or do you want to be able to, for the sake of having more flexibility and being able to do much more with it, have something where you have those bells and whistles, something that is more expensive? So that's what will get us to our destination, our place that we're going on holiday, or our wealth journey. Now, if we're going to do that, there are certain things that will try and hold you back. And I like to refer to those things that it's not whether you're in China, whether you're in Korea, whether you're in the US, whether in Europe, whether you're in South Africa, it doesn't matter where in the world you are, there are three things that will always try and hold you back from making the most out of your money, making that money really work as hard as possible for you. And I like to refer to them as the three deadly shins. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in explaining exactly how those work, but I'll give you a brief overhead view of how that works. The first one is, let's assume that you have an investment, you're saving your money, and you're managing to get that money to grow at 10% every year. And I'm going to use a flat, arbitrary figure just to make life easier for everyone. Let's assume now that you're in a low tax bracket and 20% of that is going towards tax. Dividends withholding tax, for example, is 20%. The lowest tax bracket back home, if you're South African, would be 20%. So let's assume that you're losing 20% of your growth to tax. Let's say you're losing another 6% to inflation. And then let's say you're using another 7% because of rand depreciation or devaluation. And that's where those three deadly shins come from: taxation, inflation, and currency depreciation. So what does that mean? Well, effectively means, you have an investment and your money is growing at 10%. But in real terms, as an expat, someone who's looking at it from an outside perspective, having the ability to be able to just save your money in dollars, well, you're actually 5% worse off than you were last year, having grown that 10% back home. So let's look at that in a little more detail. Now, if we look at taxation, let's start off with a rule of thumb in the investment world. We call it the rule of 72, and that effectively calculates how many years it'll take for your money to double at a given annual rate of return, at a given growth rate every year. Otherwise, made more simply, is the rule of 7 and 10. Now, let's have a look at that, how taxation affects that first 10% growth that we have. Now, if we follow the rule of 72, if your money is growing at 8% each year, it'll take 9 years to double. So instead of growing at 8%, we've lost 2%. So it's going to take us 9 years before we can double our money. The reason they call it the rule of 7 and 10, by the way, is that if your money grows at 7%, it'll double every 10 years. And if it grows at 10%, it'll double every 7 years. So here we're at 8, 10 minus 2 gives us 8%. So it now means that if we can create a solution where your money doesn't lose that 2% to taxation, then instead of growing at that at that minus 5%, it now means we're growing at that minus 3%. So we're getting a little closer to getting back up to that 10%, to getting the real value of our money. Next, let's see how inflation affects that. Now, if we look at trueflation or inflation in the US, it's around 1.83% the last I looked. That was on the 2nd of July, so at the beginning of this month. On average, inflation is usually between 1.5% to 3%. If we look at South Africa, well, South Africa's inflation, if we go by what CPI is, the Consumer Price Index, or what the government uses to calculate inflation, at the moment it's between 5% and 6%. If we go for South African trueflation, or real feel as we call it here, it's closer to around 12 to 15%. So if we compare that to places like, earlier, as I said, the US with between 1.5% to 3%, or the UK, we call those the Goldilocks economies, because inflation isn't too high, but it's also not too low. Then very simply, what it means is that an investment in those Goldilocks economies only needs to grow by 1.5% to 3% to keep its spending power. Whereas an investment in South Africa needs to grow by at least 12 to 15% to keep its spending power. So if we can mitigate and set up your investments in a jurisdiction where you're not losing that 6% to inflation, it means not only are we saving on that 2% from the tax and the 6% from inflation and getting -5 out, it means we're now suddenly into positive territory. So that investment, that money that we're building, that we're saving, is now no longer worth 5% less than it was last year in dollars. It's now worth 3%. And I think everyone likes to have positive growth rather than negative. And then comes the final one. How do we get rid of that 7%? And that's currency depreciation. How do we look at that? How can we mitigate that? If we look at the dollar versus the rand, the ZAR, if we just take it over the last 10 years, you're looking at about an 89% drop in the value. Or on average, if you were to time that out over the last 10 years, it's around 7% to 8% per annum. Now, many people feel that it's because of COVID, or because of this reason, or because of that reason, or it's only ever since 1994. Many people have lots of different reasons for why they think the rand is a depreciating currency. It has a lot more to do with economics than it does to do with politics or pandemics. If we look at this graph of the dollar versus the rand over a longer period of time, the last 30 to 40 years, going back to the 1980s, you'll see that even since 1980, prior to 1994, the rand was losing value and depreciating. Yes, there are bumps in the road, a lot of those not because of changes in politics or presidencies, but more because of either pandemics or financial crises that have happened along the way. So if we can, rather than putting that money into rands where we're losing that 7% over that, consistently over that longer term, if we can put our money into something more stable, like the dollar or the pound, the euro, the Swiss franc, it means then that we can mitigate that last 7%. Now, just out of interest for those of you out there, to be a millionaire in 1980, to be a dollar millionaire, not to be a rand millionaire, to be a dollar millionaire in 1980, all you needed was $1 million, a million rand. It was 1 to 1. Brilliant. But by 2000, in order to be a millionaire in South Africa, you only needed $142,000. You no longer needed $1 million. By 2012, just a few years after that, well, now suddenly instead of $142,000, all you need is $90,000. And now, as of July 2024, if you wanted to be a millionaire in South Africa, well, you only have to save up $54,000, considerably less. So it is possible, and this is the thing, if you had your money in dollars rather than rands, you'd be substantially more well off now if you just kept it there. So if we can mitigate that 2% of taxes by setting something up where you don't have to pay tax, and if we can mitigate the inflation by setting up in a lower inflation jurisdiction, and we can also mitigate that loss that you experience because of having your money in rands or investing in any kind of product that is in rands, whether that be property or whether that be investment funds, whether it be equities, it doesn't matter what you're investing. If it's in rands, you're looking at losing on average 7% every year. It means then that we can take that from a US dollar perspective, that negative 5% growth, and suddenly we're getting 10% growth. And we can double our money every 7 years, which will certainly help us get to our goal a lot sooner. So can it be done? Let's have a look. On the screen here, I have from investing.com a comparison between the S&P 500, which is the top 500 index company in the US, comparing that to the JSE, and comparing that over the last 10 years as an example. Now, had you invested money in the JSE, you would have been up 67%. So on average, around 6.7% per year. Had you invested in the S&P 500 or the top 500 companies, you'd be up 194%, not just 67%. So on average, around 19%. So ask yourself, if I wanted to become a millionaire and I wanted to make my money work hard and grow, would I put it into rands where it's losing 7%? In a country where I'm having to pay taxes at a higher rate than I am at the moment, would I invest back home in the stock exchange there, or would I just rather invest in the top 500 companies or in the S&P 500? Let's have a real world look at this. And for this, I have gone directly to Alan Gray's website and just put in the numbers there, see what they say. Now, let's say you are earning X amount, you're living in China, and you want to save just 5,000 RMB. And I think most people will be able to tell you it's very easy to save 5,000 RMB a month. It's $687 at 12 Rand and 70 cents to the US dollar. It's 12,709 Rand or 18 Rand 50 to the dollar. So 5,000 RMB, $687 or 12,000 Rand. If I'm saving that every month, how long will it take me to become a millionaire back home? Well, let's assume now that you are that growth investor or an aggressive investor and you're growing your money at 9%. And the reason I'm going to use 9% is because if we look at that S&P 500 over the longer term, it averages at around, yes, it may be that 19% for the last 10 years, but on the longer term average, it's around 9%. So it can be done. Now, if we invest our money in that, where will that get us? Well, if we did it back home with Alan Gray as an example, directly from their website, it means that we would, I don't know if you can see that at the bottom, but it would take us 5 years and 3 months, and we would have R1 million. If we carried on saving it, let's say you're 25 years old now, it means that in 20 years, when you're 45, you would have 8 million Rand. Or if you're 30 years old now, by the time you're 50, you would have 8 million Rand. If you were to save that money abroad, well, it would take you less time because of that less taxes and lower inflation. It would only take you 4 years and 2 months to get there. Now, something to consider here is that this projection from Alan Gray does not take tax into consideration. So on that 8 million, you're still going to end up paying capital gains taxes. If we look at the similar solution, investing that 5,000 RMB, $687 or 12,000 Rand abroad in a low tax or no tax jurisdiction, so putting that $687 to use, it means then that, yes, we'd reach our goal in just 4 years of having the equivalent of R1 million. But if we carried on till age for 20 years until you're 45 years of age, saying you're 25 now, well, then you'd have $419,000. And $419,000, if we were to convert that into rands with just that 7% Rand depreciation, means you'd have the equivalent of not 8 million Rand, but 18 million Rand. So a substantial difference, making your money grow back home versus just keeping it abroad and making it grow abroad. Let's say you're saving 10,000 RMB, and I know a lot of people who save 10,000 RMB or $1,300. 25,000 Rand if you were saving back home, and that's at 18 Rand 50 again to the dollar. But the same numbers, if you were that growth to aggressive investor, making your money grow at 9% every year, well, now you'll get there a lot sooner. Now it'll only take you 3 years and 4 months to reach that 1 million Rand equivalent back home. And if you carried on saving that for the next 20 years, by the time you're 45, well, you'd have 16 million Rand. So you can most definitely make to become a millionaire within the next 3 years and multi-millionaire by the time you're sort of 30, 35, 45. What if we did that abroad? Well, taking that $1,375 instead, or that 10,000 RMB, and putting that into a US dollar investment, where we can get it to grow free of tax. Well, now it would only take you 2 years and 4 months. So you get there a whole lot sooner. And if you carry it on, well, then by the time you're 45, you wouldn't have 16 million, but you'd have 37 million Rand, taking those same numbers into account, at the Rand depreciating at 7%. And that's substantially more. What about those who are able to save 15,000? And I have clients who save all sorts of numbers from between 5,000 to 25, 35,000 RMB. If you were saving 15,000 RMB, because there are those who are dedicated, their aim, why they went there was because they want to make as much money as they can, save as much as they can, become financially independent, move back home or move abroad, and start their own business and know that they have enough money to look after themselves. So they don't have to work. They like to work and they want to work, but they don't have. They can pursue their dream rather than doing the job that that they've studied for. Again, if we look at the Alan Gray projection from their website, the little gray block at the bottom, well, if you're saving 15,000 RMB or $2,000, you'd be able to get there in 2 years and 1 month. If you carried on doing that for the next 15 to 20 years, well, you'd then end up with 24 million Rand at the end. So yes, it can be done. If you're dedicated enough, you can certainly do that. If we have a look at an international perspective from a US dollar basis, if you were saving that money in dollars rather than in rands and saving it abroad, well, that would get you not 1 million Rand now, but it would get you $1.2 million by the time you're 45, if you're 25 now. If you're 30 years old now, it means that by the time you're 50, you'd have $1.2 million. You'd be a dollar millionaire, not a South African Rand millionaire. And just so that you understand and so that people can realize just how big of a thing that is. Currently in South Africa, there are only 38,000 dollar millionaires. Now, if you think our population is 59 million, that means that you wouldn't just be in the top 1%. You would be in the top 0.05%. You'd be in the top half of the 1%. That's absolutely astounding. So if we ask ourselves that question again, can it be done? Yes, it can be done. Not only can you make it to the point where you are a South African millionaire, but you could even, if you're dedicated enough, make yourself into a dollar millionaire. How? Well, you need to know your goal. You need to know where it is you're going. What is that destination? Thinking of wealth as a journey, where is it you want to go? When do you want to be there? You know, by what time frame? And make sure that you're using the right sort of thing to get you there. You need to be disciplined or use a disciplined saving structures, and it'll help you get to your goal efficiently and help you, dissuade you from veering off along the way. You need to be able to save abroad. Do not save back home. You need to be able to save in a hard currency where your money is not losing value just because of the exchange rate. You need to be able to save where you're not paying unnecessary taxes. And in a lower inflation jurisdiction where your money doesn't have to work as hard to keep its spending power. So do it in that dollars, that pounds, that euros as an example. Low tax or no tax environment. Don't do it in rands. Don't save in a higher tax jurisdiction than the one you're currently living in. And don't sway from your goal or your destination. If you're able to do that, then you can very easily make it happen, just like many of the other clients that I have that have done that, and other people that I've spoken to along the year and mentored who are able to do that. Now, for those of you on the call, I'm going to launch a webinar poll. And if you wouldn't mind just taking part in that, it helps me to, in future webinars, make sure that I can keep the content focused on what people would actually want to be able to hear, and also what best suits the sort of people and viewers that watch the webinars. A bit of information about me, if you would like to have a chat on how one can set up your investments abroad and how one can set up your savings abroad in a low tax jurisdiction, in a low inflation jurisdiction where it isn't dollars, pounds, or euros in a primary currency, you're more than welcome to reach out to me over WeChat. My ID on WeChat as well as Kakao Talk is Matthew Taron. You can reach out to me at WhatsApp as well, or you can email me matthew.taron@holbornassets.com, or feel more than free to look me up on social media. I'm going to open the floor to questions. Please do not forget to take part in that poll. That does help me, as I say, to make sure that I am making the content applicable to the kind of people that view the webinars and what sort of information to be able to give. Let me see if there's, where do I launch the Q&A? If there are any questions, you are more than welcome. On the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a form that says Q&A. And if there are any questions, I will answer those live now if needed. Otherwise, for many of you that have sent me questions, I will answer those then in person directly via email with you. I do hope that this webinar has been informative, and I do hope it's given some sort of insight into the fact that it is possible. One can very easily save $1 million, and one can easily save, enough to become a dollar millionaire eventually if you're being able to do that. So one question that's come in, so you don't need a lot of money to start saving abroad. Sorry, my glasses are not great. You can start with just 5,000 RMB very easily. And if you're living and working in China, I think most people can start with around 5,000 RMB. It's very easy to be able to do something. It's not like back home where you need 100,000 Rand to be able to invest in something that's offshore. 5,000 RMB is a very good starting point. And in actual fact, you can start off from as little as 3,000 RMB. So I'm just putting into my money exchanger thing quickly. Because of the minimums abroad, even 3,000 RMB will get you there. I recommend around 5, but you can start off with something like 3,000 RMB. You don't need to be saving 10, 20, 30,000 RMB to be able to get to your goal. Okay. Another client, so another potential viewer. I'm 32 and I plan to stay in China for only a year or two. What can you advise? So something that I liked, and I'm very open when I do speak to clients and potential clients, I don't advise on short-term investments. I advise more on that medium to long term. Why? That sort of 4 or 5 years and plus, 15, 20 years, retirement savings, building up money for that property portfolio, getting that second passport. Why? Because there, when it comes to that, setting up something where you're not paying tax, where it isn't a low inflation jurisdiction, where it isn't a hard currency, makes a very, very big, substantial, huge difference, as you can see from those numbers. If it's only just for a year or two, well, from an international perspective, that really is short-term savings. And short-term savings should be cash in the bank or money market. It's the sort of thing where security and safety is more important. If your plan is I'm going to be in China for 2 years and then I'm going home to set up my business, or I'm going home to start studying. Imagine now something happens. 2008 comes along, or .com comes along, Blast from 2000 comes along. COVID comes along, a pandemic of some sort. And suddenly my savings, because I've been investing it into something, into equities and shares and a nice portfolio, is down 10, 20, 30%. What do I do? I'm moving home. I have to withdraw, lose that money, that 20, 30%, and I don't have any other choice. Whereas when it's medium to long term, well, you have enough time for markets to then recover, to be able to go through those ups and downs and to be able to make changes. And the other side of it is, let's be honest, you don't really need to pay someone to tell you how to put money into an account in a bank or to set up a fixed deposit. Personally, I'd say if you're able to open up a US dollar account, keep it in that. If you can't do that in China, I know in some Asian countries you are able to do that. If you can't do it in China, we'll open up a US dollar account back home, and keep that money in dollars. That way, at least it's not going to be growing significantly, but you're not going to be losing value with the currency. And then how likely is it to get a job in alternative fields outside of teaching in China? So that's very difficult for me to sort of advise on, because it all depends on qualifications, and it depends very much as well on the company that you find a job with that will be willing to, sort of get you the work permit. I do have a few clients who are not teachers in China, but I'm not quite sure the journey that it took them to be able to get there. I know it's not easy. Right. Thank you to everyone for your time. I see there are a few questions that I've got available offline, so I will answer those. Please do reach out if you'd like any information. Again, I'm on WeChat, Matthew Turon, Kakao Talk, also Matthew Turon with a double T, or you're welcome to just WhatsApp me or reach out to me on Facebook. You should be able to find me there easily enough. Enjoy your afternoons and your evenings, and the rest of your days. And I look forward to seeing you again on a future webinar.